Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 170 of the Meet the Farmers podcast with me, Ben Eagle. My guest today is a rural advisor. She's a contract shepherdess, and she's a farmer's daughter with an absolute passion for championing agriculture in all its forms. Bizza Walters, perhaps better known to those of you on Instagram as Adventures of a Shepherdess, grew up on her family's 600-acre arable and sheep farm in Warwickshire, and has known for a long while that she would want to have an agricultural future. She has a degree in agricultural business and management from the Royal Agricultural University in Cirencester, and she's also a student and young farmer ambassador for the NFU this year. We're going to talk about that. She's also running the London Marathon in literally just under a week or so, although when this episode comes out, it will actually be yesterday that she ran it. So massive good luck to her for that. And that is in aid of Farm Africa. Bizza, welcome to the podcast. Welcome to Meet the Farmers. How is your week going?
Hi, Ben. Yeah, thanks for having me. My week started off fine this morning. I got back from holiday very early this morning, working from home. And then my dog, Tatty, who, if you follow me on Instagram, you will know
who is
very
the real
well.
star.
Yeah, she is a nightmare, but lovely. Obviously went off on an adventure last week and had a huge scab on her neck. So that was a trip down to the vets. So other than a small mortgage later, it's going well.
Absolutely well. I say that sounds a fairly typical start to the week, really.
It's a very Tatty thing to do.
It is, isn't it? It is. We will talk about Tatty a bit later. Marathon, first of all. How are you feeling? You've got less than a week to go.
Oh, yeah. I'm not really sure. I'm trying not to think about it. I've actually just had a jacket potato for lunch because apparently I'm meant to be carb loading. Okay. So lots of bread and pastas and potatoes and things. Feeling okay, I think. I've been away for the past week, so I haven't run. But apparently you only lose something like 3% of your fitness if you don't do exercise for 2 weeks. So I'm going to attempt to run later and hope it all goes well. But yeah, it's 6 days and coming around very, very quick.
Yeah.
Very quick.
And you're running for Farm Africa.
Yeah.
My very good friend Will Evans has run the marathon for Farm Africa before as well. So, so I know a little bit about it. But tell the listeners about the charity.
So it's a charity that helps farmers in Eastern Africa basically grow more, produce more, sell for more with a fair market. They have lots of projects going on at the moment. I think there's one in Ethiopia with women for coffee, growing coffee. And they're just seem like a really great charity, and there's opportunities to get involved in fundraisers, and obviously I've had this opportunity with the marathon. Probably you could go out there and see what they're doing as well. I wasn't that familiar with them before I signed up to start. I had heard of them, but I've been out to Africa quite a lot in the past, to Southern Africa, so I do have close links to it, and I'm very fond of it as a continent.
Just to tell us a bit more about that. Why Africa?
So when I was at university, I was dating a South African, and he has a game reserve out there. And I spent a lot of time kind of backwards and forwards, and then spent 3-4 months out there after uni just to see if I would settle in. So they had a game reserve, and spent a lot of time with those on the game reserve, and then also farmers, neighboring farmers, and obviously the Black community out there are the ones that work on the farm. And I mean, it's obviously years behind us agriculturally here, but fascinating. And they're just such happy people, and they use what they've got, and they don't complain. And it's just something that I can give back to them, really.
Yeah. And I've got to ask this: can people still sponsor you, even though you have? This is really weird saying, because it's coming out. Now you have run the marathon.
I wish that we could say that now. Yes, you can still sponsor me. My sponsorship is open for another month, I think. And also any sponsorship that goes in the week after, so this week after the marathon. Farm Africa have had some very kind groups that are going to match any funding. So if you sponsor me £10, it'll actually be doubled to 20. So any donations would be gratefully received, and it will be going to a very good cause.
That's brilliant. Where do people go to sponsor you?
So there's a link in my Instagram bio, my Adventures of a Shepherdess bio. You press on that, it'll take you to the page, and it's a pretty straightforward process.
Perfect. Let's talk about your family's farm, because you're arable and sheep farmers, and your dad is third generation, I think.
Yes, so my great-grandfather bought the farm in the 50s, I think, and then my grandfather farmed here with 2 brothers, And then my dad and his two brothers took it over when my grandfather passed away back in 2000, I think it was.
Okay.
Yeah.
And fairly typical arable farm.
Small arable. Sheep is our main enterprise. We
Okay.
kind of do bits and bobs of arable here and there. But yeah, mainly sheep. We've got about 650, 700 North Country mules that we
Okay.
run to a Suffolk tup. So that's all commercial. We do a lot of hay as well. We cut a lot of hay. I think we did about 400-500 acres this year.
Yeah. And that's clearly where your passion for sheep comes from then.
Yeah. Yeah.
A little bit on the future of the farm. What does that look like at the moment in terms of challenges?
Yeah, so I think the main challenge we face is succession planning. There's obviously, I mentioned dad farms with his two brothers, and between the three of them, there's 8 children, so 8 of
Oh,
me.
wow.
Yeah, quite a lot. But
Gosh,
I'm the
that
only
makes my
one.
farm succession plan look easy.
Yeah, it does, and at least you're talking about it as well, because
Yeah, it's
you
still
know
ongoing.
it's a topic that is not addressed, because at the end of the day, when you talk about succession planning, you're talking about your parents dying, aren't you? Which is
Yeah.
quite a morbid thing to talk about, and you don't want to sit around the dinner table talking about what's going to happen when dad pops his clogs. But if it's going to leave the farm in a financial mess or a sticky situation, something's got to be sorted beforehand, because it wouldn't be fair to leave it to the 8 of us to sort out.
Yeah.
So future of the farm, if I knew, I would tell you. At the moment, I'm the
Yeah.
only one out of the 8 of us with any interest in agriculture.
Okay.
So
Wow.
you'd think it would make sense that it would, I would get involved, but it's just so tricky because it's split up so many ways. And dad also has 2 sisters, so there's actually 5 of them.
Okay.
So it's very complicated, but we're hoping between us all we can work something out so that something stays in the family.
Okay.
Whether I tenant off uncles or what happens, I don't know.
And is one of you sort of spearheading that conversation? Are you getting any external advice? How's it working?
I mean, I wrote an article for the Farmer's Guardian on the Young Farmer Focus about this earlier in the year, and it did spur a bit of conversation on between dad and his brothers. I think one of them is quite keen to retire fairly soon,
Okay.
In the next few years anyway. So, and he has approached me, and we have had conversations here and there. But I think the way to do it would be for all of us to sit down and have this conversation. But it's just trying to have that conversation. It's a really tricky one, and when there's so many people involved as well, it might just be easier to walk away from it and let the 5 of them sort it between themselves. And it's tough. It's really tough.
Yeah, no, it's so hard. I mean, as a family, we've been going, I think, for probably 2 years, I reckon, and it's strange. We've had a few really good meetings in inverted commas where we've all actually got around the table and really sort of started to put it apart. But I think it does, for us, it has taken time, and it's a process.
Definitely, it's not something that happens in one conversation.
No, absolutely, and I think it's gonna take some people longer and some people less time.
Yeah.
But it's the most important thing is starting, isn't it? Really.
Yeah, exactly.
Where should we go next? Yeah, so you've written that you grew up with a love and interest in farming, and you've already said that. Yeah, out of the 8 of you, you're the one with the interest in farming. But I think I read somewhere that you have a real passion for music, and you considered doing that at uni.
Yeah.
So when did you settle that farming, I suppose in a broad sense, would be your future? But also tell me about as a fellow musician, tell me about your musical sort of life as well.
So they're both, they're very different, aren't they? Farming and music. You probably couldn't get more different to career paths. But I went to a really rural high school down the road from me, and then they didn't have a sixth form, so I had to move schools. And my parents very kindly sent me to Bromsgrove School for sixth form, which was great. And they have a fantastic music department there. And I kind of went into the first day of lower sixth thinking, oh, great, music, that can just be my one on the side. It's such an easy topic. Oh my gosh, how wrong I could have been. It was the hardest one I did.
It's huge, isn't it?
Oh God, it was.
I remember music.
Oh yeah, really difficult. I thoroughly enjoyed it. But when you're at a school like that, where you've got so many international students, you're suddenly not very good. So I was in a very small class, and everyone was just fantastic, and they played in all these orchestras at school, and also like Worcestershire young people's orchestra or whatever it is,
Yeah.
I can't remember. And I was just there kind of banging away on the piano a little bit and trying to warble away. So I managed to come out with a B in that, and I was so pleased. And I remember at school, they were very accommodating of the fact that we were farmers, and I occasionally had to miss a morning if there was a tricky lambing or anything.
Okay.
But I think for them, when I sat down and had a careers meeting, and I said, I'm really interested in music, and I'm also really interested in agriculture. They did try and push me towards the music side of things, because that's what they were used to. I don't think they had
That's
many
what they
people.
know.
Exactly.
You hear this
and
time
also
and time
going
again.
to a Russell Group uni, they like having on their records and their stats, as opposed to, a non-Russell Group, and especially the RAU. So I really considered it, and I looked at different courses, both for agriculture and music. And I looked around Cirencester and Harper and Reading, and I just thought, no, definitely agriculture is the way to go.
Yep.
And also the musical industry is so tough, and there's so many people trying to make it to the top. I just thought I'll keep it as a hobby and keep it as something on the side, because I don't want to fall out of love with it.
Yeah. Is music still a part of your life now?
Ish, yeah. I mean, there's a piano behind me, as you can see there, and also a guitar. So I do have a bit of a dabble here and there, and I competed for Young Farmers at 3 Counties show this year in the Young Farmers Got Talent.
Cool.
And came second in that, so that was
well
fine.
Done.
So yeah, I mean, over COVID, before COVID I wanted to join a choir after getting back from South Africa, but then obviously COVID happened, so that didn't happen. But I probably will join a choir again, because singing, obviously, it's a muscle, and if you don't use it, it deteriorates, and it's very difficult to maintain.
Yeah. Are there that's actually a good topic in itself, because I've looked both southeast, southwest, where I've been, and actually finding choirs, music groups at all is sometimes quite difficult when you're in the countryside. How is that for you?
So at Bromsgrove, obviously I did music, and then my instrument was singing, so voice. And I went in to lower sixth with, I think, my grade 5, and I jumped from grade 5 to grade 7, and then did my grade 8. So I got my grade 8 with distinction by the time I left. So I don't want to blow my own trumpet, but I'd like to think I'm better than just a little community choir. But to do that, you've got to go, to the nearest one for me would be something like Worcester Cathedral or Warwick. So it's it's quite a commitment to have to go and do that every week, twice a week, and then performances at weekends. I mean, then everything else we've got going on at home, and Young Farms and all that sort of stuff. It's tricky to find that commitment. I mean, in the village, they do have a community choir, but when I inquired about it, they said, you don't need any musical experience or knowledge. And I just thought, I'm not sure how I fit in there. So
I know exactly what you mean. I'm not sure whether we'll put this in the podcast or not, but to make a bit of it's like sort of, I just rather, either we're going to do something decent, or I'd rather not do it at all. Young Farmers, how long have you been involved with Young Farmers?
I joined my local club, which is Withall, when I was, I think, 14. So 10 years now. My gosh, 10 years.
Yeah. And is your local club in a healthy state? You hear
it
different
is now,
clubs in different states.
Before COVID, we were struggling a bit. I wasn't that involved when I was at uni, so I kind of joined when I came back. But then obviously COVID hit, and I think for some clubs, COVID did a lot of good, because everyone missed it and wanted to get back into it. And you had, young people sat at home without anything to do, and we were really promoting it on Facebook and doing weekly meetings and stuff like that. So we went from, I think, something like 10 members to we're nearly at 50 now.
Wow.
And it's taken 2 years to get to that, but we've done really well. And I've actually just taken over as chairman of Withall.
Congratulations.
So busy, exciting year ahead. Thank you. Yeah.
Cirencester, tell me about your time there.
So I was there from 2016 to 2019, studied agricultural business management, which was fab. My mum actually went to Ciren in the 80s. So when it came to looking around these unis, my dad said, Catherine, you're not to go to any of these universities with her, because we know what you're going to say when you go to Harper, and we know what you're going to say when we go to Ciren. So Dad and I actually went and looked at the two. And even he said, because he didn't go to university, he went to the local college, but even he said when we got to Ciren, this is definitely the one for you. And I had such a brilliant time. I've made some real lifelong friends. Quite a lot of them are coming on, have been yesterday to watch me at the marathon.
Cool.
So yeah, we're all really close and lots of contacts all over the world. My sister also graduated from there this year, so I went back for her graduation and saw all my old lecturers and friends, and it's just such a lovely place.
Nice. Yeah, I can't remember the last time I went back. Yeah, because I did a postgrad there 15 to 16, so it's just been
Oh, okay.
just
So you would
before
have
you.
just missed me then.
Yeah, yeah, just
Yeah.
before. But I doubt it's changed that much.
No, not at all. Not
So,
at all.
and when you left, you worked for a time at an ag merchant store before becoming a full-time shepherdess. Um,
Mhm.
let's talk about the sheep because obviously you grew up with them and you gained a lot of hands-on experience from quite a young age. But um, a lot of farmers' sons and daughters do that, but they don't end up going down that
Yeah.
line. You decided to commit fully, and you travelled a lot with it. You went to Iceland, I think. You went, yeah.
Yes, I was there this
So you
year.
went
Yeah.
abroad as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, tell me about that sort of side of your career.
So yeah, when I got back from South Africa, I was looking for jobs and then COVID hit. But because working as well in an ag merchant store was seen as an essential shop, I still went ahead and I got the job and I moved to Oxford and worked in this store. And I was hoping that I would go on to become more of like an agricultural rep, so out about on the road, but there was just no progression there. So in the December, I left and came home. And then in the new year started as a contract shepherdess, so that would have been 2021, and just kind of traveled all over the place. I landed at home and then for a local farmer, and then I went to Glasgow, then I went up to an island off Orkney called Stronsay,
Oh, so cool.
and then had a bit of a break when I came back, and then did some other bits and bobs, and then did it all again this year as well.
Wow. So how many sheep do you reckon? That's a
Oh my
horrible
gosh.
question. How many sheep do you reckon you've lambed in your lifetime?
Oh, I couldn't tell you. Probably more than I've had hot dinners, put it that way.
And like we said at the beginning, you now work as a rural advisor.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about your day-to-day role, because I don't think it's something that we don't talk enough about on the podcast, given how much influence actually people in your sort of in your line of work actually
Yeah.
have on the farming sector. But yeah, tell us about what you do day to day.
So I actually had a conversation with someone about this at the end of last week, and it's a guy called Luke, and his Instagram is Down on Daintree Farm, and he put a story up saying that he does a lot in schools and stuff, and he said, I want to know if you're involved in agriculture but not actually on farm. And I just replied to his story and I said, oh, I'm actually working as a rural advisor. And he said, I would never have even thought that was a job in agriculture or tied to the industry. So I basically chat to farmers about grant schemes available for them, countryside stewardship, BPS, and it's a really interesting time at the moment going through the agricultural
That's one word for
transition
it.
plan. Yeah.
Especially on the
So
last few days. Blimey, can't keep up.
yeah, no, I know it's quite chaotic. I mean, I haven't really caught up at the moment because I've obviously landed back from holiday this morning.
Yeah, literally the whole world has changed since you've been away.
Yeah, I know, and I've been blissfully unaware, sunning myself. So I've got a lot. Yeah, I've been catching up this morning with clients, but I've got a lot to catch up on this week. But yeah, it's just really interesting because you've constantly got to be in the news and in the know and keeping up to date with stuff, and there's always things changing and going on. And I think, yeah, it's a very interesting time because I think 2027 is the end of countryside stewardship and BPS. So then you've got the sustainable farming incentive, which I'm not sure how successful that will be, and various other schemes, tied in to that, like with elms and stuff. So we'll see
Yeah,
what happens.
and obviously you're quite new in your current job, but what is your sort of feeling on the ground of your company's clients as to the uptake and interest, I suppose, so far of things like SFI?
I don't think it's as successful as DEFRA thought it would be, because if you compare it to BPS they pay £90 a hectare. SFI, if you go into an introductory grassland level, is £28 a hectare.
Yeah.
So it's such a huge cut. And although in my opinion it's tricky because we've relied on them for so long, but I think that we should be moving away from relying on all these handouts and subsidies, because it's going to happen. We're not going to have them in 4 or 5 years time. And you hear some people want as many grants as they can get and as much free money as they can get from the government, which is absolutely fine. And if you need it, then you need it. But you've got to make sure that your business and your farming business can actually stand on its own 2 feet, because in 5 years' time, this money isn't going to be here. And what are you going to do then? You're going to be in trouble, basically. So as awful as it sounds, I think some farmers in 5 years' time won't be farming because they just don't have the business model to sustain it. I'm hoping here we're going to be fine. We've got various diversification projects going, and we don't apply for grants that come out left, right and centre because of that reason. We don't want to be reliant on them. So the SFI, we've had a few clients, inquire about it, but actually when you look at it, it's not worth doing, really.
Social media. Let's talk about social media. When did you start your Instagram and why?
I started my Instagram last, I think, March, when I set off on this lambing journey.
Was that it? It's that recent.
Yeah. Okay. So 2021, March 21. It's just so I didn't bombard all my friends on my personal Instagram with sheep, because I think quite a lot of them are getting a bit fed up. I mean, quite a lot of my friends from school, are city goers in London and living that kind of life. And I just thought, Bizza, the last thing they want to see is your sheep. They really don't care.
Exactly what they should be seeing.
Well, you'd think, wouldn't you? I was probably a bit excessive in it. So I started this other page up and just said, if you want to follow it, you can follow it. And it was literally just a personal thing that for family and friends to follow this journey, because so many people were like, oh, this is amazing, like please keep us updated. And I was like, oh, I can't bother to send all of you individual messages. So my aunties and cousins and uncles started following it first, and then got the role as NFU Student Young Farmer Ambassador, and it kind of became a bit more of a public platform then.
And there's Tatty, of course, who sort of helps along the line. Tell us about Tatty, because let's be honest, Tatty is a bit of an Instagram sensation.
She's the queen of the platform. So Tatty actually shouldn't really be here. I was away lambing in Orkney, Stronsey, last year, and the Sporting Lucas Society, because that's what the breed she is, a Sporting Lucas Terrier. My mum had always wanted a dog from them, a Sporting Lucas, and I emailed the secretary before Christmas and said, if there's a litter available, can you let us know? Because they're a rare breed, so you've got to be put onto a waiting list. And when I was in Stronsey, I got a phone call to say, oh, someone's had a litter of 7, which is quite a big litter considering they're tiny dogs. And he said, there's 4 bitches available. If you phone up, you'll get first refusal. So I phoned up and said, I really would like one. Obviously, what's the price? Because it was at the time when lockdown puppies were just through the roof. And she told me the price, and I thought, oh my god, I've budgeted for like 2 of those, we could get 2. And my boyfriend was just like, absolutely not, Bizza, you're not even meant to be having 1, you're not having 2. So I was up in Stronsey, and I had to send him down to Wiltshire to go and have a look at her and choose her. And I decided not to tell my mum, because at the same time she was getting a Labrador puppy. So I thought, this is not going to go down well. If I tell her, I'll just appear back at home with this puppy. When I got back from Orkney, we went down to see her, and my boyfriend and I went out for dinner with some friends and popped down to Wiltshire to see his puppy. Then in June we went away down to Devon. On the way back up, I picked her up, and my dad knew, and luckily he managed to keep it a secret because he's terrible with secrets. And I walked into the garden with this tiny little puppy in my hands, and my mum just stormed over and went, Bizza, what the hell have you done now? And I was like, it's a Sporting Lucas and you've always wanted one, so here it is. And she was absolutely fuming. She was fuming with me for all of about 10 minutes, because she's just the cutest dog ever. Since then she's been causing absolute chaos and running off and chasing everything and stealing eggs. That's her favourite thing. She goes into the hen house and steals the eggs. And she's just really, really naughty.
But it's great for stories. So
she's fab for content. She's great. And some people say to me, oh, it's definitely framed, like you definitely put her on that chair. And I'm like, no, I really didn't. Or on that table, or you definitely gave her that egg. I'm like, no, honestly, I didn't. I was working the other day from home, and I heard an absolute chaotic calling from the chicken run. Went down, and I was like, oh, I know exactly what's going on here. And went down, and Tatty was in there, and she kind of very slyly walked over to me with this egg, dropped the egg, and then the chickens came and got it. So she was very upset with herself. Poor thing.
When do you lamb?
We lamb in end of February, beginning of March.
Okay. So Tup's already gone in then.
The Tups went in, I think, last week while I was away, although I drove past them this morning and they were all stood under the tree, so I don't know how well it's a bit rainy here, so
Taking a little bit of time to get
Yeah,
back into it.
to
It's a
recoup.
long
Yeah.
wait, isn't it? It's a
Yeah.
long wait before you get to get used to get used to it again. We're going to start to round things up, and we always finish the show with the same two questions, which I'm going to ask you now. The first is, if you have a message for the public, what would it be?
It would be to continue supporting British farmers. It's a turbulent time at the moment with the agricultural transition going through and war in Ukraine, obviously rising inputs. It's such a tough time, not just for us, but for everyone. But if you continue to support your British farmers, you're not only, allowing us to continue our livelihoods, you're also putting money back into your local economies. I think people forget that if you go to your local farm shop and you buy your fruit and veg and your meat from there, you're actually putting back into your local economy, and what goes around comes around. So I think that would be my message to the public, is just to keep backing us. We're doing the best we can, the highest welfare standards, and really doing our best to put food on the shelves for everyone.
And a message to farmers.
Message to farmers is, again, just to keep going. Everyone's doing so well in these times. It's really tricky, and seeing it through work at the moment, I know it's difficult. Also to talk to people. Obviously mental health is such a huge thing within the farming community, and getting better. People are talking more, but still not where it should be. So there's always someone that will listen to you, share your knowledge, and meet up for a drink in the pub on a Friday night or a Wednesday night or whatever night you can. It's a big, happy, loving community, I think, and we're all here for each other. So yeah, just keep talking.
Yeah, that's a great point, actually. And it is World Mental Health Day on the 10th of October coming up.
Yes.
So we're actually covering that on next week's episode.
Lovely. Good.
Yeah, keep talking, guys.
Yeah.
And there's an opportunity to promote a farming related podcast, blog, or social media account. Who would you like to promote?
So I did give this some thought, and there are a couple. Luke, that I mentioned earlier, who's down on Daintree Farm, based over in the east, I think he's Norfolk way. Absolutely fantastic guy, and I met him at a NFU Farmers for Schools training. He is great at educational stuff, and he brings it back down to an understandable level if you're someone that's not, doesn't have the knowledge of farming. So he's one that I would promote. And also another one, if I can, is Sam Walton, who is Sam on the Farm. I don't know if you follow him. I actually bought my Dartmoor top off him, and he is absolutely fantastic. He's a farm manager, the big lovely farm up in Derbyshire, and he's just so down to earth. And if you follow his page, it's all very real. He covers family life and on the farm and personal life, and he just shares everything with everyone on his page, and it's very relatable, it's very real, which I really like. And yeah, he's just such a great guy. I've got a lot of time for him. So yeah, they're my two that I would love you to go and have a look at.
Oh, brilliant. Those are great shout outs. And finally, how do people I've said finally a lot here. This is this really is finally. How do people follow you on social media?
So on Instagram, I am Adventures of a Shepherdess. So you can follow that to see what I get up to day-to-day life, and also see what Tatty gets up to as well.
Of course.
Yes.
Well, Bizza, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's been
No
really, really nice to meet you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's weird because you hear and see all these people on social media, and then actually sitting and chatting to them almost in real life.
Yeah, nearly. Yeah. It's the next stage across.
Yeah, it is.
Onto Zoom. But no, thank you so much for coming on, and best of luck with everything you got going on.
Thank you.
I'm sure you got a very it's gonna be a good year. I'm still upping the positivity despite
it is. It will. If you say it like it will be a good year.
It will be. And good luck next year. Good luck next weekend for the marathon.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you very much for listening. If you listened to last week's episode with Wilfred, you'll know that I've been thinking about the long-term sustainability of Meet the Farmers and where it's going. And with this in mind, I have set up a Patreon page, which is patreon.com/Meet the Farmers. I know how uncertain everything is financially at the moment for everyone, but if you can spare a few pounds a month, I'd really appreciate it if you could head over there and join the Meet the Farmers Supporters Club. Depending on how much you give, there's some bonus content available too. So that's patreon.com/Meet the Farmers. And if you're interested, I'm also on the lookout for podcast sponsors. So just get in touch with me through my website, which is benjamineagle.co.uk, if you're interested in getting hold of a sponsorship pack. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the show wherever you're listening, share it on your socials, tag us at MTF_podcast. A quick mention of what's happening this week over on our sister podcast, Rural Business Focus. I'll be joined by the chair of the Ramblers, Rebecca Dawson, who also runs a couple of outdoor businesses. And we'll be talking about hiking and rambling in a business context. That's out tomorrow, and you can find it wherever you're listening to this podcast. Next week on this show, sorry, I know there's heaps of news. I don't normally do this at the end, but there's lots to talk about. Next week on Meets the Farmers, as I said earlier, it is World Mental Health Day on the 10th of October. So that will be our focus for next week's episode. I hope you can join me then. I'm Ben Eagle. This has been Meet the Farmers. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope you'll have a great week.
And he didn't come home, basically. He rang at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I was just like, where are you? Come home. He's like, oh, I'm just going to go to my mum's. I was like, don't be ridiculous. Like, it's 2 o'clock in the morning. And he was looking after the children the next day. And I remember him just going, you know what, I really love you. And I was like, yeah, like, whatever, come on, just come home, don't be stupid. I just thought, what? I was half asleep, like, didn't know what was going on.
Yeah.
And that was the last time I ever spoke to him. I woke up in the morning of July the 5th and couldn't find him. And so, yeah, that kind of was the start of where everything really went very, very downhill very quickly, because I knew something was wrong. I don't know why. I can't explain the feeling that I had, which was just completely in my gut, which told me this is bad, like really bad.